let me know when we have to start.
Yeah, live started, Mataji. We can start the recording. I'll start the recording.
Okay. Okay. So, Hare Krishna, and I welcome everyone to yet another session of Bhagavad Gita as it is, 18 chapters in 18 weeks. And today we are going to look at chapter 3. And our speaker for today is Her Grace Sukha Sagari Mataji. She has also been practicing Krishna consciousness for over 2 decades and been studying the Bhagavad Gita for a very long time now. So it's quite a large chapter, just like chapter 2. Chapter 3 is also slightly big, but hopefully we can finish it in one session. We'll have an overview of chapter 3 by Sukha Sagari Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. You can now take over the call. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Preeti. Like she said, this chapter also has 43 verses, so it is in one sense a big chapter. And we will start with the invocation prayers as always. Okay, all of us can chant together. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Our respectful obeisances are unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. You're kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Deva and delivering the Western countries, which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. O Krishna, O energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service. So bring and offering humble obeisances unto all our acharyas, unto the lordships, and also to the Vaishnavas on the call. We will start discussing this chapter 3. The chapter 3 is actually titled Karma Yoga, and we'll do a brief recap before we head into the chapter 3. So we see that in chapter 1 we saw that Arjuna is bewildered and on the battlefield, and he refuses to actually fight. He puts down his Gandiva bow, and he cites many reasons actually to not fight the war. And at the end he actually says that he is not going, because he feels that this is detrimental in all aspects. So he offers various reasons like social causes and dharmic causes, and so many reasons. We saw about 4 to 5 reasons. And then in second chapter, he surrenders and he says that Shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. He says that I bowed onto you as a disciple, so now you instruct me, O Krishna. So then Krishna starts instructing Arjuna regarding the nature of the soul, and he says that there is no need to worry about the samsara, or the process of life and death, because this just happens. The soul is eternal, so we need to think beyond the physical body and think at the level of the soul. So that's what he tries to explain. Krishna is explaining in second chapter, and that is Sankhya Yoga. And towards the 40th verse, he makes a turn. Krishna actually starts explaining. He tells Arjuna that so far he has been explaining, the process of Sankhya or Jnana Yoga, and now he would go into Buddhi Yoga or Karma Yoga. So, and around the verse 40, this change of paths take place. And then Krishna explains that a person who is actually um, who actually uses his buddhi or intelligence and then performs work is at a higher position and a more beneficial position. And so one should engage in buddhi yoga. So we are at this point where chapter second is concluded with that note. And one more important thing which we saw in chapter 2 was the contemplation through destruction. How the cycle happens when you contemplate on any sense object, and then it gives rise to kama krodho bijayate. Like there is this big cycle which we discussed in second chapter. So we will now move on to the third chapter, where Arjuna is still having his doubts, and his first question is like, he's confused because he says that earlier you told me that in chapter 2 that I just need to follow my duty and do my duty and just fight the war, but towards the end of chapter 2 you started speaking about buddhi yoga. So this has kind of put me into confusion, and I'm not sure what you want me to do exactly. So that is in the verses 1 and 2, Arjuna expresses his doubts. He says that now I'm confused. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that Krishna actually, he has explained Sankhya Yoga and also Buddhi Yoga in the second chapter. So it is not a very systematic presentation. That's what Prabhupada says. So that kind of gives Arjuna, these questions in his mind as to what should he be actually doing. So now again, Krishna tries to explain him, and we will move on to the next part. So he gives a short answer, in the third verse, which is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. So he says, Lokesmin Vivida Nishtha, Pura Prokta Mayanagha. Pura Prokta means he has spoken earlier. Krishna says, I've spoken earlier in chapter 2 that Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, that a person can, take this path of Jnana Yoga and, study Sankhya and then realize absolute truth. Or he could just do Karma Yogena Yoginam, that is, utilize Buddhi Yoga, which is Prabhupada equates to Karma Yoga there. So this is where this is the short answer Lord Krishna actually gives Arjuna to explain that there are two paths that you can take. And we'll see that this chapter is titled Karma Yoga. So how Krishna further pushes this idea of Karma Yoga further in this chapter. So he moves on to tell why a person, he has to act or perform any karma, because in this chapter, Krishna will be expounding the reasons as to why a person must engage in karma yoga or devotional service. So he starts off by giving reasons as to why a person has to act. Very beautiful reasons are cited, and we may not go into all the details, but at least touch upon a few. So these reasons are actually listed in verses 4 through 8. And we'll read through what Krishna says. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So he's very clearly saying here that, just by abstaining from work, we may not be able to, get freedom from reaction, because our mind may be dwelling, like we saw in the last chapter where he says, Vishaya vini vartante niraharasya dehina. rasavarjam rasopyasya. So he says we need to focus on a higher truth. Just by saying, by negating, trying to negate our thoughts, we will not get this actual freedom from reaction, because our mind will be still dwelling on the sense objects. So there is this story from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where towards the end of Canto 5, there's this question asked as to, what actually helps remove this roots of sin. So it is explained that in Canto 6, in the beginning, it's explained that this root of sin, by just doing some kind of atonement, will only actually burn the superficial layer of the sin. So it won't go until the roots. It will not burn the total roots. So only by taking to devotional service will the actual root of sin be burnt. So similarly, we see here that just by trying to abstain from work, but our mind being dwelling on that sense objects, we will not be able to achieve much, because this root of desire must be diverted, because the living entity or the soul always is active, like we saw in chapter 2. So he is always has desires, and the way to actually get actual freedom from this work, or to do or to get a karma, is by diverting our attention towards devotional service. So that would be a good solution to actually get freedom from reaction. Then we'll move on to the second reason. He says everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has achieved from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So we see in our daily life too, sometimes we are very sleepy, sometimes we are very active, we would like to we want to go out somewhere and do something. And sometimes when we are in, at least in Kali Yuga, very rarely when we are in this mode of goodness, we would like to at least associate with devotees or go to the temple, do some service. So most of the time in Kali Yuga, we are engulfed by mode of passion and ignorance, and we see that we find ourselves sleeping or lazing or doing things which may not be very conducive. So this material nature, these modes of nature actually act upon us, and in one sense direct us to do all these actions. So one who restrains the sense of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So mithyachara sa uchyate. This is a very key verse Prabhupada often quotes. So a person who is actually thinking about sense enjoyment, but externally trying to portray that he or she is very renounced, as he's called a pretender. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, is by far superior. So Krishna gives all these reasons. He says that at one point of time, he also says that you cannot like in the next line, we see that a person cannot even maintain their physical body if they stop work. Like our body is compared to a machine. So like a car, if we have a car and we just leave it there and don't use it for 4 or 5 months, it happened to us too. We, during COVID, we were using only one car, and the other car was just lying there in the garage, and the battery died. So we had to call somebody to, jumpstart the car. So when we don't use our body, and when we don't do any kind of work, what happens is the body also is like a machine. Yantra rudhanima, yeah, it'll be discussed in further chapters. So it's like a machine, and that may also catch rust and may not work. So even to maintain our physical self, we need to work. So Krishna is citing so beautiful reasons. There are more details to this, but since this is an overview, we will just skim through whatever we can in this 1 hour. So let's see. So far we saw that Krishna has given reasons as to why a person needs to act in this material world. One is, he says, is that we are under the control of the material modes of nature. And then he says that a person who tries to artificially restrain his senses, but his his mind is dwelling on the sense objects, he's actually a pretender. Then he says that even by, you have to perform basic duties to even maintain your physical body. You cannot, maintain yourself if you just sit there. So he gives like so many reasons here why one person has to work. Let's see next what he says. So the question now arises is, he says that a person, should try to control himself and work in intelligence. So what kind of work? So far he has given reasons as to why a person must work. So now we'll see as to how the person must work, for whom should he work, and where should he work, and what kind of work should he do. So this will be answered in the next verse by Lord Krishna. And this is also a very key verse, which is often quoted by Prabhupada. यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गसमाचर. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. So we see the question, the answer to whom should the work be done, for whom, has been answered here. So it says as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. So where we are in this material world and we are fighting, with our, we are bombarded by the senses and by the modes of material nature at all times. And so we are in this material world. So where and to whom is answered, and how work must be done as a sacrifice. So yajnarthat. So yajna, we need to perform work as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu. So Vishnu is referred to here as yajna actually. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. So how do we perform? For the satisfaction of the Lord. And in this way, you will always remain free from bondage. So this is the answer in short. This is the crux of this whole chapter of Karma Yoga, where Lord Krishna explains that how one must perform work. We saw in second chapter, he discusses the art of work, yoga karmasu kausalam. He says the art of work is yoga. The art of work is yoga. What he's trying to say in chapter 2 is that, by yoga or by connecting, yoga means connecting with the Lord. So by connecting your work to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that would be the perfection of work. So that would be the art of working. That he says, yoga karmasu kausalam. So that is the art of working. And this is further discussed here, detailed here. And he says how that must be done. It must be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, it causes bondage. Karma bandhanaha. Lokoyam karma bandhanaha. So tad artham means unto Vishnu. Karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. That way you will remain free from bondage. So this is the answer, to the whole chapter. In one sense, the key theme or the lifeline of this chapter revolves around this verse. And we'll move on to see what Lord Krishna says next. So now that he's invoked this term yagna, he goes on to describe what is actually the origin of this yagna and gives us some more details about the Vedas, demigods, which are all connected and related to the yagna. So we'll see how Krishna is just, is like going in the flow, like Krishna is explaining in the flow. First, he is explaining as to why a person must act. Second, he is giving details as to how, when, where, what, unto whom a person must act. And now, he said, and the key word yagna is introduced, like we saw in this previous slide. And then now he goes on to describe how did this yagna, come about. So this is discussed in verses 10 through 12. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna sacrifice, because His performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So, as we know, we all, take birth in this material world because we want to enjoy independently of Lord Krishna. So he arranges for this enjoyment for us and this material world, where we think we are the controllers. I'm the head of the family. I'm the mother. I'm the, I'm nurturing my children. I'm giving everything, providing for them. So this sense of controllership, which we see in the material world, where it's all I, me, myself. So that is actually arranged by the Lord because of our our nature to uh, actually enjoy independently from Lord Krishna. So he says in the beginning of the creation, he says, okay, you go to the material world and enjoy and do what you want, but you have to follow it up. Like they say, every right, comes with a duty or a responsibility. So even you can go to the material world, Bhuloka, and enjoy, but then you have to perform yagna or sacrifice. So this is the basic level of, somebody following a civilized or a dharmic way of life. So a person who does not resort to any of the scriptural injunctions while performing work or does not take to doing any kind of yajna, he is still in the animal platform. So the basic or the first level of coming to a human platform is to at least follow the injunctions of the Vedas and try to form some kind of yajna. So how was this done? So this arrangement is made by the Lord in the beginning of creation. So the demigods, like we know, there's a ruling personality for each of the facilities we enjoy in this material world. Like we get water, air, basic food necessities, and things like that. So there are so many controllers or demigods who are actually providing us. We see the sun rise every day and set every day, the moon rise every day, set every day, and the rain's coming. So these are all arranged and orchestrated in the background by these helpers to the Supreme Lord. And they are the demigods who are actually giving us. So the Vedas, they outline that these demigods must be pleased because they are providing us the basic sustenance of our life. So that's how the yajna came into being. So in the beginning of the creation, when we wanted to get independent of Lord Krishna and wanted to enjoy here, he provided us all these facilities and also gave us these Vedas and yajna so that we could purify our mind and senses and go back to him eventually. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to demigods is in return is certainly a thief. He uses the word stena, is a thief. So it's our duty, like I said earlier, every right comes with a responsibility. Similarly, when we want to enjoy, people, we all have our desires and we want to fulfill them. Like somebody wants to go to an Ivy League, somebody wants to become a millionaire or a billionaire, or people have different dreams in life. So at least the basic thing we need to do to come to the platform of the spiritual life is that offer at least a portion of our the results or the fruits of our work, to the Supreme Lord. That is called yajna. When we make a small sacrifice, like make a donation or take 2 hours off from work and go and do some service in the temple to please the Supreme Lord. So whatever fits our time and convenience, at least to start with in the beginning, we have to make these basic arrangements. So we'll move on next to see. And next, in the next verse, we see in verse 313, there is a very practical example which is given by Lord Krishna. Supposing we are not making enough money to make any kind of donation, or we're working day and night to just make ends meet, what can we do? So there's very beautiful and practical tip here given by the Lord, that at least the basic thing we can do is, because everybody eats, right? We all eat to sustain ourselves. so we can at least offer what we eat to the Supreme Lord. So this is a very practical example given by the Lord. And this is also another key verse. We'll recite it. Yajnashishthasino santo muchyante sarvakil vishaihi bhunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So we see the power of the food or the bhoga which we offer to Lord Krishna. We see that how powerful it is. When we offer this food to the Lord, it becomes purified and sanctified, and we don't incur the karma of actually honoring this food. So when we do not offer this food, what happens is that we actually are indebted to so many people, right? We are indebted to the demigods for giving the rains for these crops to grow, for some farmers to cultivate it, for some merchants to process and bring it to us. And you never know, there could be small living entities, organisms in the food which we may be eating, though we may be thinking we are eating a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So many things are there in between, like they say, the cup and the lip. So all these things can be actually in one sense eradicated by offering this food to Krishna, because he would then sanctify the food, and the prasadam, which we call the mercy as it is called, once it's offered to the Lord, that will actually take away all this kind of reactions which we get from eating food which is not offered. So this is a very simple and a practical way to do a small yagna, which is to offer our food every day to the Lord. Whatever we eat, we can offer to the Lord, and so that it will purify our senses, our body. I mean, there are many scientific researches done onto how actually the food offered to the Lord purifies, the senses, the like in Ayurveda, they say the dhatus, like in the body, everything is purified just by eating, honoring this prasadam which is offered to the Lord. So there are so many pastimes also, with Srila Prabhupada, where we saw this, the effect of prasadam, one pastime that comes to my mind is when Srila Prabhupada was once going on a flight, on a plane. He carried this puff rice with him, and his personal assistant was Shrutakirti Prabhu. So he was offering that puff rice to Prabhupada, and then this air hostess, like the stewardess, she was there, and she was like, why do you carry food? Why are you bringing food? We're providing you food here. So then they just said, no, we just like to follow our diet, like that. So then she grabbed a handful of the puff rice, and had it herself. So, I mean, Prabhupada was like, see, she's now got her Agyat Sukruti. So later on, when Shrutakirti Prabhu, he went again, I think this was in South Africa, if I'm not wrong. So he went there or South America, I think. Yeah. He went there for preaching. And then he met one devotee there who called him and said, I would like to introduce you to one lady. I was out on book distribution, and I met this lady, and I was surprised that she was wearing a sari and a tilak, and she welcomed me, and she told me this nice story. So Shrutakirti Prabhu, he went with this devotee to see who that lady was, and she was none other than the air hostess or the stewardess on the flight. So she told the story that how she had met this one holy man on the flight and just eaten a handful of puff rice, and things just changed after that. She took to Krishna consciousness, and now she was like a full-fledged devotee, like that. So we never know, how this prasadam acts miracles in so many ways. So that is the mercy of the Lord. And so many other pastimes are also discussed, like so many of us are attracted to Krishna conscious philosophy because of prasadam. And Prabhupada very proudly calls ISKCON a kitchen religion, And so I think the major part of all our lives revolves around, offering nice bhoga to the Lord and then partaking of it. So this is a major principle of our philosophy. And we see how beautifully it weaves into our lives. And there are like how a doctor prescribes like two things, right? One is a medicine and the other one is the diet. So generally when we fall sick and we go to a physician, so these are the two things we ask, right? I mean, any medicines I need to take, or do I need to change my diet? What can I eat? I mean, is it just the what diet is that called? Like when you take just bread, potatoes, and I forget the name. So like that, there are two things. Srila Prabhupada says the diet, which is Krishna Prasadam, which is offered, the food offered to Lord Krishna. And the second thing is the medicine. And what is the medicine? The Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So these two things can work miracles in our life to keep us spiritually healthy and happy. And of course, they do keep us materially also healthy and happy in maintaining our physical body. So this is a very nice, simple, and practical example, which is given by Lord Krishna, which we can follow. I mean, even if we are not able to do many other things, we can very easily follow this. And this offering, it will be discussed in, I think, in the later chapters, like Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So the offering need not be so opulent as you see in the picture too. So it can be very simple. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So Patram is leaf, Pushpam is flower, Phalam is fruit, Toyam is water. So you can offer simple things to the Lord and please Him and partake of it. Yeah, so let's move on to see what Lord Krishna has to say next. So we saw how in the previous slide, like how this yagna came into being in the beginning of creation. Now, Krishna goes on to describe how this yagna cycle actually works. Prabhupada says many times that we should not accept spiritual topics just, without questioning or without understanding them properly. So Krishna consciousness is a very, very scientific process. And this science is actually given by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita. And that's where he explains so many different cycles. Like we saw in the second chapter, the cycle, of going from how when you contemplate, on Dhyato Vishyan Pumsan, when you contemplate on sense object and how it leads to destruction, Buddhinashat Pranashyati. So until then, Krishna gives the cycles, like the hierarchy of things, how things move. So here we see how the yajna cycle actually happens. So it's a very interesting and scientific approach to, in one sense, like we have studied a lot of ecological systems, in science during our school days. So this is another aspect which can be very nicely introduced to our children, and we can see how things actually work in the bigger realm of the ecosystem. So we'll read. This is verse 14. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So we see there are three men here, or women, three living beings, and we all survive on food, right? So we all need food for our existence. And where do we get food from? Only when there's enough rains, that we get this food from. And these rains come. Sometimes we face famine, there is a shortage of rains. So that time there's not enough crops, there's not enough food like that. So in India, it's a common practice, like they perform a lot of yajnas to actually invoke these rains. So these rains are actually invoked, or they come from yajna. Okay. And the performance of yajna, and why do you perform yajna? It actually has its root in prescribed duties, because yajna is a prescribed duty a person has to do. Like we saw earlier, how when we take birth in this material world, we have the right to enjoy, so we can eat our food, but then what do we need to do? We need to do our prescribed duties of yajna. So this is the cycle of yajna, which is very nicely discussed by Lord Krishna here. We'll read further. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see that the Vedas are coming from the Supreme, this body of knowledge, Vedas, they are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they give the information or the knowledge about the regulated activities. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam means that it is actually the word of the Lord, that how we dharma is actually coming from the Lord himself. So dharma, how to lead a dharmic life, or how to lead a regulated life, is described or prescribed in the Vedas, and these Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So we know that Krishna or Vishnu's another name is Yagna. He's the Yagna Purush. He's the beneficiary of all the sacrifices. So when we perform these sacrifices, and I think, if I'm not wrong, it's in chapter 8 or 13, there is this verse, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, where Krishna explains that how he is the fire sacrifice, he is the ghee that's going into it, he is, the performer of the sacrifice, like that. So everything is the Brahman, like that. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. So we already saw the person who does not offer, food to Krishna and just eats for sense gratification, he is actually incurring a lot of sin. So similarly, we need to follow these injunctions of the Vedas. If we are on that platform, if we are still into sense gratification, if we want to achieve few things in life, so we need to pay a price, or we need to make some sacrifices or some yajnas if we still have those kind of material desires. So this is for a person who is still afflicted by material desires. So unless they perform yajnas to appease the Lord by the demigods, so even we'll see in the later chapters how these yajnas, or this sacrifices done for the demigod, actually reach the Supreme Personality of Director. They are all directed towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu himself. So that will be discussed in later chapters, how that happens. So as of now, we will take it from Krishna's words, that that these sacrifices which we are actually offering go to Lord Vishnu himself. So unless we do that, we will be incurring sin. Let's move on to the next section. This is verses 17 through 35. So long we saw, how people who may have some material desires, and how they should act, or how they should perform yajnas to purify, their activities. So now we are moving on to the next level, to the level of transcendence. So in this few verses which we'll be seeing next, Prabhupada describes that the man of knowledge, like we saw in chapter 2 how Krishna explained that a person who is engaged in buddhi yoga, he understands he's on a transcendental platform, and he understands that his duty is to perform work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So we'll be moving to that next higher phase of devotional service. So long we saw somebody who still has material desires. So Krishna, how he is explaining that how he must engage in a yajna. So now we'll move on to the next stage, where a person who is in transcendence, who is still not in this platform of material sense gratification. So there are different, without going much into details, so there are different rungs of the yoga ladder. There's a person, the lowest rung is a person who's not even gotten onto the ladder, is the animal platform, where he or she does not even follow the Vedic injunctions. And then there is the Sakama Karma Yoga, where a person, like we saw in the earlier verses, he or she has some desires and would like to get them fulfilled. So they have to engage in performing some yagnas or some sacrifices. And then Nishkama Karma Yoga. So then in Nishkama Karma Yoga, a person may may not be very much interested in the fruits of the activities, but he or she may be attached to the activity itself. Sometimes we find ourselves saying, oh, I like to cook for the deities, that's what I like to do. So we are not interested, we are actually performing devotional service, but still there is some kind of attachment to the service, right? I mean, I want to just cook for Krishna, sorry, I cannot do the altar service, or sorry, I don't want to do book distribution, that's not my cup of tea, like that. So then the next platform is like pure devotional service, where the devotee is so advanced, so spiritually advanced and situated, that he or she is ready to do anything and everything for Krishna. We see the prime example in Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning, when he moved to America, he was cooking. He taught the devotees, how to do kirtan. He taught them how to play kartal, the mridanga, everything, everything. He used to cook 100 chapatis for all the devotees who earlier joined him. So he used to cook by himself and give them prasadam. I mean, they were so fortunate souls that Prabhupada, they could take directly the prasadam from the hands of, cooked by the hands of Srila Prabhupada. But Prabhupada engaged in, everything, though he was in the sannyas order of life. We'll see, I don't want to go into more detail, how in chapter 4 and 5, it is in how Krishna says how a sannyas, what is the difference between renouncing your work and leading a renounced life, like between sannyasa and karma sannyasa yoga. So all this will be discussed in further detail, but I just got tracked there, so sidetracked there. So I'm not going to go into those details, because all those details will come later in later chapters. So we'll move on with what Krishna says with a person who is more transcendentally situated than a person who has material desires. So this is the other thread, other line of thought here Krishna presents. In text 17, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So he says this self-realized person, who realizes what is the meaning of self-realization. It means that you understand that you are not this body, you are the spirit soul who has to engage in devotion service. So the person who realizes this, for him there is no duty. So such a person who's on this platform, he need not perform all these yogas, these yagnas, these sacrifices, these different kind of things, because each and every activity of the self-realized person who takes pleasure in the self, and he is actually directing all his energies and his activities towards the pleasure of the Lord himself. So everything he does, his whole existence is actually a yagna, or a sacrifice in the service of the Lord. So a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. And then the example of this matter of duty, how one should act, has also been touched upon in chapter 2. We actually see that Krishna says, just do it for the sake of dharma. He tells Arjuna, right? That these people, their destiny is already decided. So it's not like you're going to kill them, they come, when we enter this material world, we come with the stamp of our birth, our death, our education, the wealth we can make, everything is already decided. So again, this point is reiterated here, and we see that Krishna says that one should act as a matter of duty, and he gives example of King Janaka. Janaka, he's one of the 12 Mahajans, and he says that Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. So Janaka was a king, and he ruled his kingdom very fairly and very justly. And though he was ruling his kingdom, his mind or his thoughts, like that was described in chapter 2 towards the end, were always towards oriented towards the service of the Lord. So externally, we may be performing material duties. To externally it may appear that we are performing material duties, but internally the consciousness would be on Lord Krishna. So this is what Krishna is aiming at here, and he says that we have to perform activities as a matter of duty, because we are in the Varnashrama system, and we need to follow the laws of the land. These laws of the land are actually created by Lord himself. And we'll further see in the next verse, he says that whatever a great man whatever action a great man performs, yad yad acharati shrestha, tat tat evetaro jana, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So he says that people of, fame and name must especially follow all these laws of the land. If the president of the country, say, or the king is, does not follow any laws and he breaks the laws, what kind of an example would he set for his citizens, right? Because even we as people, we look up to some role models, who are high up there for whatever reasons, and so such people need to be more careful about what they're doing, and set an example to others, because many people are looking up to them to see how they got up to that high level. They are looking at them as their role model, and they want to also be something like that in their lives. So it's especially important for people in higher positions or positions of authority to be more careful and about how they're performing anything, or about how they act in the society. And after speaking of these great personalities, he goes on to talk about himself, the Supreme Personality of Lord himself. When he came, when he appeared on this earthly planet, he went and he took, shelter of his guru, and he learned the science of, the Vedas and all these spiritual science from his guru. And he played the role of a baby, who's scared in front of his mother Yashoda, when she tries to, when he steals butter, and so he's rubbing his eyes and, kind of scared looking at his mother. So he plays this role of a baby, and in front of his mother, and he carries the shoes of his father, Nanda Maharaj's slippers on his head. They are very, very beautiful paintings depicting all these pastimes. And we also see how humbly Krishna, as a friend to Arjuna, he takes the position of a charioteer. And it's also described that, in the war, because there's so much noise around, the way a person directs the charioteer to move is by kicking them. So Arjuna, his own friend, Krishna took the humble position of a charioteer. And so many examples are there where the Lord, becomes subservient to his devotees, to his, we also know the story of Sudama, his friend. When Sudama went to visit him in Dwarka, Lord Krishna washes the feet of Sudama, his friend, and he, snatches the chip rice from Sudama and he eats it, and then Sudama is, bestowed with all the wealth and everything he needs without even asking Lord Krishna. So the Lord, he is purchased, totally purchased by the love of his devotees. So that's the only way we can purchase the Lord. I mean, yes, we can make big sacrifices, we can make big donations, we can make a lot of things. But if the intention of love, or the intention of building this personal relationship with the Lord is not there, then all this, would just be external, like running through the motions. And uh, you know uh, the actual transformation of heart takes place when we establish that personal relationship with the Lord. And the Lord is purchased by his devotees, and there are so many examples we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the life of the acharyas and our scriptures, there's tons of examples how the Lord becomes subservient, to his devotees. And even in Bhagavad Gita, in future verses, we'll see that he will ask Arjuna to proclaim that a devotee never perishes. He never wants to do that, take that credit himself, but he asks Arjuna, to proclaim that a devotee never perishes, because the Lord gives that much importance to a devotee. He may take an insult to himself, but he will never tolerate an insult to a devotee. So that's how high devotees are in the in the vision of the Lord. So he says that even though he appears on this material planet, he has to perform these duties which are actually prescribed in the Vedas according as the life in this material world. So he gives examples of great kings, but he gives his own example and says that I myself have to do. But we learn that he is not bound to any duty. He's untouched by any of these material modes, and so many other details in future chapter. Let's move on. So then he moves on to say that so many people, like who may not be on a transcendental level or on the platform of self-realization, they may be attached to their duties or to their work or things like that. And he says that it is not wise to disturb these people, from their path. They should be slowly, gradually brought into this transcendental platform of self-realization, but not abruptly. It's not good to abruptly disrupt their minds, because they will get bewildered. And he explains this in verse 3.27. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit's soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature, although these duties are inferior due to performer's lack of knowledge. So we see that the spirit's soul, a person, may be bewildered because he thinks that he is doing the activities. Many times we tend to take credit, for what we do. Oh, I got the first rank in class, I got the highest grade, I worked hard for it, I did this. So a little do we realize that, so many factors have to work in conjunction for us to be successful in anything. Left to ourselves, like even a blade of grass cannot move without the sanction of the Lord. So here we see that the Lord says that these activities are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. This is what he's trying to say in this verse. But the foolish spirit soul, he thinks that vimudhatma, ahankara vimudhatma means the foolish person. Okay, he thinks that he is performing these actions. So in this chapter, we see that, Lord says that these actions are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. Later in one point, we will see that the Lord says that actually these actions are actually, carried out by the person himself, the living entity. And some point of time, we will see that the Lord says that these actions are actually, done under the auspices of the spirit soul, the super soul. So like this, there'll be different descriptions given. I'm not going to reveal the secret as yet. So let's stay tuned, for the other chapters to see what is the actual conclusion as to how these actions are performed and who's behind all this. So all this is going to come in future chapters. So for now, we'll just take it at this, and we'll take it at this face value that these are carried out by the three modes of material nature. We'll move on further. So therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profits, with no claims of proprietorship, and for free from lethargy, fight. So Krishna gives so many reasons and so many things. He says that you have to now take up your arms and fight. So no giving excuses. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So he says that one should, whatever faculties are invested in us by the Lord, we are each born with some kind of, proclivity. Like some people may take to Brahminical professions, like teaching, things like that. Some may take to cultivation, business. Everybody has their own propensities and how they would like to lead their life. So according as to what has been bestowed to them by the Lord, one must perform their duty. But if we try to go out of this, it only creates problems. For example, we find a lot of dissatisfaction people face at work. Many times we see that, especially in Kali Yuga, because everybody wants to be there, up high up there, and they're trying to be somebody or something they're not actually. And this gives rise to a lot of problems, not only mental but also physical health related issues. We find that this is very common in Kali Yuga, because everybody is pushed to that same standard of measurement, or the same standard, the same yardstick as to who's up there and making the most money. So like that, we see that the Lord says that it is better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though faultily, than others' duties perfectly. So we should not try to go out of our nature and do something totally like uh, uh, totally against our nature, because this creates unrest. And we'll see in the next slides as to Arjuna asked this question. So what actually impels one person to go against his or her nature? He asks this question to Krishna. So he says, what is actually the reason that people are suffering? And Krishna answers it in the next verse, and he says, Kama esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidhyena miha vairinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust, only Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So we saw how kama, krodha, all this cycle we discussed, in the second chapter. So here Krishna gives away the reason as to why, a person, sometimes we feel, compelled, right? Like we feel, oh, I need to do this, though we know that, we are not very much qualified for it, or we're not ready for it. But the lust, this mode of passion takes over, and, we want to achieve all these things which may not actually be good for us, without realizing that. But we also want to join, keeping up with the Joneses, like they say. uh, we want to join the rat race, and we want to do these things. So this is all impelled by lust. A person in mode of goodness is actually contented, and he is happy with whatever is he gets by his own accord. Like we saw in chapter 1 or chapter 2, Yadrichaya Chopapannam, Lord Krishna says that this fame, this everything is coming to you, O Arjuna, by its own accord. So just fight, don't think too much about others. So whichever comes naturally by its own accord, a person in the mode of goodness will be very happy. So then we see Lord Krishna discusses more about this lust, and he gives the three places where this lust are actually sitting, in the living entity: the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So because the lust sits in these three places, it covers the real knowledge of the living entity, and it bewilders him. So we know now what we need to do to control this the lusty, or the greediness. So these our senses, the mind, and the intelligence have to be controlled. But how do we do that? Can we artificially shut our mind to everything around us? When I see a rasgulla, can I say, oh, that's not a rasgulla, actually that's a bitter melon, and tell myself and my mind to shut off, and say that I'm not going to even think about rasgulla? Can I do that artificially? Or can I use my intelligence and say that, well, rasgullas is made, with sugar syrup, and sugar is not good for health. I know my intelligence says that, a lot of sugar is not good, so I better not take. So do you think all these tricks are going to help us stay away from that big Mahaprasadam rasgulla? No, right? So somewhere we do give in to that. So what can actually be done to control, or to get out from this, from this lust, the covering of lust, which covers our real knowledge, is, again, Krishna gives this beautiful hierarchy or a cycle. It says that these senses, the working senses, like in text 42, senses are superior to dull matter. So when the rasgulla is sitting there in front of you, your senses, they know that, oh, this is rasgulla, this is a tasty thing, and something else is sitting which is not palatable. The senses knows, right? Though this is not something good for me, that doesn't look good, that looks very unhealthy, like that. So the senses are able to differentiate between dull matter. So when there is a rotten fruit in front of you, your senses, that it smells bad, it doesn't look good, it's all wrinkled, and it doesn't feel good, all those things we are able to touch and smell and tell. So our senses are superior to the dull matter, and then our mind is superior to the senses. So then our mind starts questioning, the senses are attracted to this nice rasgulla there. Then the mind is like, should I eat it, should I not, should I eat it, should I not? And then the mind tries to reason all this with intelligence, and but this intelligence again is inferior, or lower than the position of the soul. So this is the hierarchy given by Lord Krishna here. So what is the way that we can control our senses, or get over this lust? Is act at this platform of soul, because we see that intelligence is again subservient to soul, mind is subservient to intelligent, senses are subservient to mind. Dull matter is again inferior to senses. So which is the highest on this hierarchy is the soul. And how does that soul work? The soul is higher than the intelligence. And what is the food for the soul? Okay, the food for the body is rasgulla. Okay, that is satisfying our senses, it's satisfying our mind, it's making us feel good that we had nice protein there. Okay, your intelligence says it's good protein, milk protein. And but so what is the food for the soul? The food for the soul is nothing but transcendental knowledge. So Krishna moves on to say how we can control this. Therefore, O Arjuna, in verses 41 to 43, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So how we can do this is by regulating the senses and engaging in devotional service. So this is the answer Lord Krishna gives to control the uh, senses, or to get over this uh, symbol of sin, that is lust. That and this can be done in the soul level by engaging in the devotional service of Lord Krishna, like how it was explained earlier, how a self-realized person is actually so nicely situated in transcendence that he acts as a matter of duty, and not for his own sense gratification, or not for his own lust, or not for his own greed, but he acts as as a matter of duty. So this is where Lord Krishna, he closes this chapter 3 by saying that by using spiritual knowledge. Let me try one second. Yeah. So I just want to pick up the last verse. Yeah. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material uh, senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, which is Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So this will be discussed in the next chapter, because Krishna leaves this little clue there, in the end of the chapter 3, he says that one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness. So the next chapter will discuss what is the spiritual intelligence, or what is this transcendental knowledge. So that is the theme of the next chapter. So Krishna gives this clue at the end as to what to expect in the next chapter. There were a few pastimes I wanted to discuss in this regard, but I think I ran over time by 4 minutes. So the conclusion, I have just listed 3 verses. Almost all the verses in this chapter are worth memorizing and reciting, very, very beautiful verses. But I just listed the most commonly used 3 verses here. So if anybody is interested, they can try to learn these 3 verses. So I'd like to end the discussion for today here. And if any of us have any questions or comments or realizations, please feel free to share. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Sukha Sagari Mataji, thank you so much for taking all the effort and your time for explaining chapter 3 in great detail and stressing on the important verses, especially the verses on the Yagna part. So thank you so much, and I open up the forum to all the devotees who have questions or comments or anything you want to ask. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I totally enjoyed your class. And I'm seeing a new light in chapter 3 now. I have learned a lot about overcoming lust, and I thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for attentively listening.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is Mukund. I was listening to your class, and in one part, one question just popped up in my mind. It's not it's not at all related to the topic, but it just popped up in my mind. So I was thinking, like, I just suddenly started to think that there are so many butchers around the whole world, and they kill many animals, including the cow. And in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, it says that even if one drop of blood drops from of the cow onto the ground over there, there'll be a huge drought. So I had a question: then why aren't there droughts all over the world?
Yeah, it says so your question is, why aren't there droughts all over the world?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, the Supreme Lord is very merciful. There are a few good living beings also in this world, like devotees, great acharyas, great men who walk on this planet. And so the Lord actually, in one sense, he is giving us a lot of, leeway. And I mean, if we were to count each and every activity of us in the material world, actually it's explained in Bhagavad Gita that the moment we step into the material world, we are performing karma. We cannot get over that. We are either we are doing something there which is accruing in our karmic account. So it is the mercy of the divine Lord that he tends to discount a few and gives us lesser punishments for what we're doing. So it's like something we just cannot get over. We may be thinking that we are eating vegetarian food or things like that, but unless we eat prasadam, even that vegetarian food or the vegan diet, you never know, there are so many small microorganisms sitting there. And like this famous story of Narada is there. Mrigari is there. When Narada Muni preached to him, he was watching every step he was moving, because he was afraid that he may step onto an ant, or some living entity. So every step we take, padam padam yat vipatam na tesham. So in this material world, every step there is danger, and only by dovetailing and only by doing devotional service can we get rid of all these dangers which are there in this material world. Otherwise, every minute, even unconsciously, we are accruing this karma. So yeah, some are gross, like you said, some who may be involved in animal killing, and these are very gross, I don't deny it. But there are also subtle things, which we may be doing unknowingly. So the Lord is very kind, and he wants us to get rid of this samsara cycle, the cycle of birth and death, and go back to him. And that's why we have this transcendental knowledge here. Is that okay, Mukund?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare.
I have one question, and first I want to thank you for this wonderful session. I really learned a lot, enjoyed a lot. One question I have is how is Yagna invokes the rain? One of the slide you were explaining that. So in Krishna consciousness philosophy, how does how to explain this?
Yeah. So Yagna invokes rain. We saw, let me go to that slide. The cycle of Yagna. Parjanya. Yeah, that's that verse. Yeah. So earlier, if you remember the slide, which we studied, so we need to perform some sacrifices for the demigods. Okay. So these sacrifices are these yagnas. So when you do these yagnas, these demigods get pleased, and then they give us rain. So there is so many demigods, right? In charge of Indra gives the rains. The air or the wind is given by Vayu. So many demigods are in charge of these different facilities which we are using in this material world, right? So these demigods, when they're pleased with these sacrifices which we perform, they give the rains. But like you rightly said, how can we practically, translate this to the present times we are living and in Krishna consciousness? So in Krishna consciousness, especially for this age of Kali Yuga, the yajna which is prescribed is Sankirtan yajna. So obviously, the quality of the brahmanas, the chanting of the mantras which were present in earlier yugas are not present now. Hardly few people know Sanskrit. Sanskrit has become a very dated, almost extinct language. People are not learning Sanskrit. And so there are hardly people who can chant those Vedas or Sanskrit with, with proper pronunciation and diction and the proper mood, because they're not trained in that way. And then the ingredients for the sacrifice, the ghee, there is so much of animal slaughter going on. So the quality of the ghee, the quality of the ingredients that go into the sacrifice are also not up to the mark in Kali Yuga, right? There is a fault in almost everything there. The performer may be not on a pure level. So the best yajna, which is prescribed for Kali Yuga, is Sankirtan yajna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given this freely to us without any strings attached. And the only price he asks is a little bit Shraddha, just a little bit of faith in the holy name. That's all he says is the price. So he has discounted so many factors generally which are taken into account when performing yajna, as to purity, cleanliness, the different kinds of gifts that are given away, the ingredients used, all these have been discounted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this Mahamantra is the best, the chanting and the reciting of the Mahamantra is the best yajna we can perform in this Kali Yuga to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased, naturally the demigods are also pleased. So there are 33 crores demigods, like this thing. And it's impossible for us to please each and every one of them, given Kali Yuga, our time, our knowledge, the inferior quality of ingredients, and so many other factors. So best way would be directly to go to the root, and please the Supreme Lord by chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and that will take care of so many things for us. Is that okay, Prabhuji?
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Thank you for the wonderful answer. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the wonderful class. Mataji, I have a quick question. You were mentioning that one of the verse Lord mentioned to Arjuna that one can, like, it's good to perform one's own religious duties faultily than to perform somebody else's duty. So what are, like, that time there were varnashram dharmas, but now everybody is Shudra in Kali Yuga. So what is the actual duty of us, like all the people?
Yeah. The Vedas recommend that savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radokshije ayituke apratiyata yayatma suprasidati. This is what is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshije. So savai pumsam paro. Pumsam means for the living entity. Paro dharmo, the best dharma, the greatest dharma is yato to bhaktir adhokshaje is to perform devotional service, or bhakti to adhokshaja. Adhokshaja is another name for Lord Krishna. So this is the highest duty which everybody is supposed to be performing, but we are not on that platform. So in that situation, the Lord Krishna, like he says in chapter 3, we perform something, we may have some material desires. We want to gain something, some wealth, fame, knowledge, beauty, whatever that is, we want to gain. So in that situation, we need to perform some kind of a sacrifice, like maybe feeding the brahmanas or doing some devotional service or things like that, until such time we reach that Savepum Samparodharma platform, where you are performing ahaituki apratihata, that is without any motivation or without expecting any results. We perform the devotional service to the Lord. So that is the best dharma. That is the best dharma, or the actual dharma, which the Lord actually wants us to do. But until such time, we can take the guidance of Guru, Hari, Guru, and Vaishnavas, the Shastras, and see what best we can do to reach that platform. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, like materially, whatever profession we are in, that is not a case, right? Here.
Well, yes, that's what he's trying to tell there, because maybe you are in a certain, we are in a certain profession, and we need to take the guidance from our Guru and see how, slowly we can get away from all these material entanglements, and we are able to fully concentrate our resources and our faculties on service of the Lord. So until such time, the Guru, the Shastras, the Vaishnavas, they will guide us how we can slowly rise from this platform. So this is referring to your material duties and responsibilities there, that verse which you were just mentioning.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hari Krishna. Danvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I just thank you for the class and so, but can you explain to me again what is prashadam?
Prasadam, yes. Prasadam is basically, the word translates to mercy of the Lord. So let me just go to the slide. So we have a visual, anchor to what we discussed. Where's the Prasadam plate? So bad it is. Did we see the plate of Prasadam somewhere? Yeah, so Prasadam is basically, here it is. The Lord's mercy and the food which we prepare daily, what we eat, when we offer it to the Lord, it is actually converted to spiritual. It becomes totally spiritual, when it is actually accepted by the Lord. Anything that comes in contact with the Lord is actually spiritual. So when we say we are engaged in devotional service, because we are doing it for the pleasure of the Lord, even the activities which we're doing, starting from going for shopping, to purchase the bhoga, or to purchase the ingredients, or to purchase the groceries, and then trying to clean up our kitchen, and the actual act of cooking the food for the pleasure of the Lord, the consciousness with which we cook for the pleasure of the Lord. So all these things, when we are doing it for the pleasure of the Lord, and the Lord accepts it, these all become spiritualized, our actions. So externally, it will appear like we are just cooking a meal like that, but when we're doing it, today I want to make this for the pleasure of the Lord. Krishna loves this, so let me try to make this, like that. When we try to dovetail, or when we try to do these activities, these simple activities for the pleasure of the Lord, then they become spiritualized. So similarly, when we offer this food that we have prepared to the Lord, and he accepts it, this food becomes spiritualized. So it's no longer ordinary food. It is it's the mercy of the Lord. It's looked upon as the mercy of the Lord. So generally it is said that we don't eat the food, but we honor the prasadam, because the prasadam has been accepted by the Lord, and it is the mercy of the Lord. So we see Krishna in the prasadam, and so we honor the prasadam. So we have to eat in that mood. that this is Krishna himself here. So am I clear, Prabhu? Was that the explanation?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the mercy of the Lord. And so would it be right to say that offering the food to the Lord blessing it and giving it back to us is called prashadam?
Yeah, you got
Mercy?
that. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So, Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Thank you for such a wonderful class. Mataji, I have a question. While you're saying the reasons why a person has to act, Krishna says some reasons why we have to act. So in the second point, he says that you can restrain the sense objects from action, but the mind dwells. And then he's called as a pretender. So is there a difference in the karma that is there any karma generated when we do with mind or work with mind? Or if so, what is the difference, Mataji, for the karma that is generated with the senses and also with the mind?
Yeah, in Kali Yuga, we get this, what to say, discount. I'm not finding a better word for that, but yeah, we are having this. The Lord is merciful and kind, and the thoughts which come to our mind, are excused in Kali Yuga, so they do not accrue karma in one sense, in Kali Yuga, because we're so sinful, and the mind is always going in all directions in Kali Yuga. So just imagine if we had to incur karma for even our thoughts, we would be left with absolutely zero good credits, right? So in Kali Yuga, the thoughts, which come to our mind, they do not accrue karma, but in the other yugas, they do accrue karma. So in that sense, the Lord is very lenient with us in Kali Yuga. But then this cycle, which that said, if our mind is going to be, dwelling on these sense objects, and if we are dhyato vishayam pumsa, so if we keep thinking about it, that contemplation, it actually will give rise to karma. So that is what is explained in chapter 2, by the Lord, that contemplation on these sense objects will turn into lust for it. Eventually it will turn into that lust for it, and that lust turns into greed, and then greed turns into the illusion and so many other things, and then towards the end, destruction. So like that, they do have an effect. But yeah, it is right, it will be good if we can brush away these kind of thoughts that come to our mind, and that can be done by, whenever we get some thoughts of sense gratification, perhaps we should take up to chanting or listen to a class or do some service, because we cannot artificially control our senses, but at the soul level, when the soul is engaged in the service of Krishna, they get automatically controlled, the senses, the mind, the intelligence. So that would be the route to seek, when we find ourselves too distracted by the senses. Is that okay, Mataji?
To the doing sinful activities using senses, which will occur karma for us. So that may lead us to that.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, Mataji, in Kali Yuga, just the thoughts do not accrue karma, but eventually, if we keep, thinking about the bad thing, we're going to act on it, right? That's what Krishna says. So, dhyato vishayam pumsan, sangas teshu upajayate, sangas, attachment, right? Teshu upajayate, it arises. Sangas, sanjayate kaman. So, the sangha or this attachment give rises to kama, lust. Kama krodho abhijayate. So, kama gives rise to krodho abhijayate, that is giving rise. It gives rise to anger. And then krodhat bhavati sammoha, and sammoha smriti vibhramaha. Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinashat Pranashyati. So this is the cycle. So if you're going to do that for a long period of time, if you're going to be contemplating, naturally you're going to be attached to it, you know. So better not to think too much on those things. So by the thoughts by themselves do not accrue karma in Kali Yuga. But then if you are going to keep thinking on it, you are going to be acting on it, right? So it gives rise to lust and then the big chain of things. So that's what Krishna is explaining here.
Yes, yes, Mataji. Thank you very much. Mataji, while we are discussing about lust, you said the three places where they reside, like senses, mind, and intelligence. So, like, what is the source of the lust, Mataji? Like, how does it come? Where is its existence?
Yeah, that's what, Arjuna asked this question right here. He says, what impels one to act against his or her nature? So for example, we know that our capabilities or our what is possible for us is to maybe get the third rank or make a living of, just be some some worker in a company, or let's just go with the rank. So supposing our faculties which we are invested with allow us to make the fifth rank in the class or the fourth rank in the class. But then if we try to push ourselves beyond a limit, and say that no, I must get the first, and then you are trying to go beyond your nature, in every which way to attain these kind of things, which is not okay. There's another thing that you may use this faculty to serve the Lord, and then you may endeavor for this, which is acceptable. But if just for your sense gratification, for lust, because you just want to be the first in your class, and you're striving, so that lust, that thing that you want to be something which you are not currently comfortably, by your own karmic footprint, whatever you're not destined to, but you're striving hard. No, I need to get this, and that lust is there, right? That comes from that's where it comes from, when you try to be something you're not, like let me go to that verse. It's far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than others' duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in others' duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So when we're trying to be something we're not, somebody else, we're trying to, because that person is like that, let me try to be, like that, and trying to push like that. And that lust, which drives us to be something which we are not. So that is where this lust comes from, like our desire to be something which we are not. That's what is explained here, Mataji.
Mm.
Okay, so like Krishna says, you have to do our own prescribed duties. So when we stick to our prescribed duties within our limit, that's not going to generate any lust. So when we try to do more, which is beyond our limit, that's where the lust is going to
Yes, yes. When we are trying to strive to be something else, trying to do somebody else's duty better than engaging in another's duty. Like for example, here we see Lord Krishna is advising Arjuna that he's a Kshatriya and he must go and fight. Not like, go away like a renunciant, give up everything and go and sit. He's trying to do somebody else's duty, right? He's not a renunciant, right? He's a Kshatriya by nature, right? But he is trying to give up everything and he says, I'd rather go and meditate, sit somewhere and meditate. So Krishna says, no, no, don't try to do all these things. Do what is your dharma, that is better. So that's what he's trying to say, that even your own dharma, you do it faultily with some fault. You may not win the war or you may lose the battle, whatever it is, but just do it. Just don't give it up and then say that I want to become a sage. And so that is not right. He says you have to do whatever your dharma is. So that's what Krishna is trying to teach us here.
Yes, Mataji, very nice. So that's how it gets related to Arjun, the point where Krishna is telling that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That was one of the question, how it's related to Arjun. And Mataji, in the final slide, you said that Krishna says to curb the great symbol of sin, that is lust, you have to regulate the senses. But we know before we discussed that mind and intelligence are more powerful than senses.
So does the same apply for mind and intelligence also? Like you're regulating mind, regulating intelligence. Like how do
Yeah.
we remove lust from mind and intelligence?
Yeah. So do you see that hierarchy in the slide now, Mataji? It's going all the way up to the soul, right? So we have to engage the soul in the service of the Krishna. The soul food is nothing but transcendental seva, transcendental service. So all this, eating jalebi, laddu, rasgulla will not feed the soul, right? The soul is by nature Satchitananda, and its duty is to actually, it's the eternal servant of the Lord. So the soul craves for this food, the spiritual knowledge. It craves for this. And we can only feed the soul by engaging in transcendental knowledge or transcendental service. So when we feed the soul with that, all these other things below it, mind, intelligence, sense, all this get purified. So
Okay.
that is the answer to it. So when you engage in devotional service, all these lower things, they automatically come into control.
Okay. Okay, Mataji, that's clear now. So we have to target soul first, like we engage in transcendental service, and automatically the intelligence, mind, and senses, they will be regulated or they'll be controlled. They'll be free from lust.
Yeah, you got that right, Mataji. So devotional service is like a simple answer to everything, because by engaging in devotional service, though in the beginning phases, we may not like it, we may do it as a matter of duty, like when a person is in is in the like Vaidhi sadhana, like they say, the prescribed duties. Oh, my Guru Maharaj told I have to chant. Oh, my Guru Maharaj told I have to offer and then eat. My Guru Maharaj told I need to wake up for Mangal Aarti. We may be doing things like that, but still they have an effect. Slowly they will become natural and spontaneous to us. And because that thing will purify our existence, just by following the guidance of Guru and Shastra, we will be purifying our existence. So the answer is, like you said, devotional service will clean up or purify everything else under it.
Yes. Thank you, Mataji. Very nice class and very good answers also. And very grateful for your service, Mataji. Jai Sachinandana. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji, for so actively always taking part in the classes. You're a big inspiration to us. Yeah, I find two raised hands. I think they asked their questions, right? Sapna, Wadwa, Mukund Krishna Singh, I think.
Yes, Mataji. I already asked.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sukha Sagari Mataji. I think the answers were very relevant and to the point. Thank you so much for the beautiful session. Anyone else has anything to add or ask her, Mataji?
Lalitang Mataji, would you like to add something, Mataji? Actually, Lalitangi Mataji is a great, exponent of Bhagavad Gita, and she's read it so many times. So it's always a pleasure to listen from her. Mataji, do you have any points to add?
Hari Krishna Mataji, I'm so sorry I was in and out the class, but very, very wonderful class, Mataji. So many important practical points you covered, like how performance of chanting and prasadam, and how we can, all these things are helping us to act in this world at the same time, not get entangled. Thank you, Mataji, for your wonderful lecture.
Thank you, Mataji, for guiding me always. Thank you.
So Hare Krishna, everyone. Before we wind up, I just have a couple of announcements. A couple of sessions ago, there were some devotees who requested for Sanskrit shloka recital sessions. So we have, finalized that. And very soon you will be seeing an announcement and poster regarding that. It will be starting very soon and it will be led by Sukha Sagari Mataji herself. That is one announcement. And the second one is that we did send out the quizzes for chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1 has been completed by all of you. And it has been also graded, and we have sent emails. Chapter 2's quiz is there in WhatsApp group. If you want to access it and try it, that will be great. And again, it will be graded and we will send you personal emails regarding that. and stay tuned for Chapter 3's quiz. Thank you so much for being there with us. Sukha Sagari Mataji, anything else you would like to say before we wind up?
I just would like to thank everybody, and my gratitude to all the organizers. If anything I said makes any sense, it's the credit is all due to my Guru Maharaj. And anything wrong I have said is all because of my foolishness. So please forgive me. Thank you so much. And I wish, I'm looking forward to the other sessions in the future, where Krishna reveals so many other gems and truths. So let's all, get into, go into the other sessions in the future. Let's all get prepared for that. So Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji, and also our gratitude to Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, who's been very actively hosting the calls and taking care of all the technical aspects. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Vinita, for always, giving me the right
Mataji,
speech.
for the beautiful class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinita. Hare Krishna.
Okay, let's all offer our obeisances to Mataji. Vansha
पितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।
नामाचार्य शिला
की जय
की जय
की जय
माता की जय
जय।
हरे कृष्णा। Thank you
Hare
all.
Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, everyone.
Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all devotees. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.